Well, hello everybody, and thanks once more for tuning in to Classic Dirt Bike TV, and a very special mention here to the many brand new subscribers who have signed up to view my video content here on my YouTube channel. Now, as it stands here in Scotland, we are still under the restrictions of the COVID-19 travel ban, and unfortunately we are not allowed to move around Scotland, let alone the UK, although of course as soon as these restrictions are lifted, we will certainly travel the country and bring you the very best of vintage and classic dirt bikes here on my channel. Now, this next featured machine is a bike that I spotted at the Nostalgia Scramble a few years back, and this particular bike was built by Jem Parker and the guys at JR Racing. So enough chat from me just now. Let's just get straight into the video and have a look at this very nice Honda CR250 Red Rocket. Okay, this CR250 Red Rocket was put together by Jem Parker and his team at JR Racing, and Jem has quite a good reputation for building these quality twin shock race bikes, and in the past I've already featured other bikes from Jem's workshop on Classic Dirt Bike TV, including a couple of very nice JBR Hondas and a couple of Maicos. Now, this particular bike I think is a 1978 or maybe even a 1979 model, although I never really got any information on the bike from Jem when I filmed it on the day. But as you can see, it's not a fully original bike, and this Honda is actually number 10 from the JR Racing production line. Now, these mega Honda CR250 motors were just game changers when they were first launched back in the late 1970s, and were basically replicas of the Honda RC Works engines of its day, and the designation of the letter R at the end of the CR250 title allegedly stood for replica, in reference to those Works bikes. Now, of course, on an original Honda 250, these engines would have been painted in that bright fire engine red paint, which of course helped give the bike the handle of the Red Rocket, or Red Rooster as it was sometimes known in the States. But these were still very compact little engines, and of course were extremely quick. Now, this very nice looking alloy head steady bracket was made by Phil Denton Engineering, who make all manner of upgraded parts for these 250 Hondas. Now, Jem's 250 here is fueled by a Key-in flat slide carburetor and a V-Force 3 reed valve setup. But of course, one of the downsides of these Honda Red Rocket motors was that they had a chromed cylinder bore, which Honda claimed dissipated the heat better than a traditional iron cylinder. But if you damaged it or wore it out, you couldn't rebore it, and a brand new barrel had to then be bought to replace it. Now, as you can see, a very good set of upgraded footrests on this particular Honda to replace those skinny efforts that were fitted back at the factory. Now, as you're no doubt aware, that this exhaust expansion chamber on this CR250 is not the original for this Honda bike, and naturally it looks like it's been made up specifically just to fit onto this bike, but it's still well enough made and fits as good as the original would have, and will certainly be lighter than the stock pipe from the Honda factory, especially when it's joined onto this quality alloy tailpipe made by Fresco Exhaust Systems. Now, Honda, of course, were still using alloy fuel tanks on their crossers at the end of the 1970s, and these nicely sculpted fuel cells usually held enough gas to keep that 250 buzzing along in even the longest of race motos. But they were quite slim and well constructed, of course, and in the years to come Honda would then change to plastic fuel cells. Now, as I remember, these Red Rocket seats were again good enough for a 1978 motocrosser, and they weren't such a bad place to lay your backside down on from time to time, and that was of course in between trying to keep that bike from throwing you off the back when you snapped that throttle open. Now, Jem's bike again has had a completely brand new set of SM Pro wheels fitted to replace the old Honda originals. Now these, as you'd expect, have also been laced to these fully refurbished hubs with their new heavy duty stainless steel spokes. Now the front and rear brake backplates and the bike's ignition cover were all manufactured in magnesium by Honda, although they still used a steel swing arm at the rear for this 1970s machine. Now at the bike's front end, now I'm not sure if these are the original forks on this bike, as they look far too beefy for a 1978 Honda 250, because as I remember these had rather skinny non-adjustable 37mm Showas back in the day, which gave the rider about 12 inches of travel. But I'm sure that these Red Rockets also had a single front brake and not this stronger twin leading shoe magnesium hub that's fitted here, which looks like it could be from a bigger Honda bike or maybe even a Yamaha. But nevertheless, these forks and brake upgrades will certainly be a better option than the flimsy and softer parts that were fitted on these bikes at the Honda factory. Now, as you can see, a decent set of triple clamps on this bike with a new pair of these quality rental bars bolted in place. But overall, the quality of this bike is just superb, and it's all very well put together. Now, a set of Pro Grip rubbers fitted here again, all professionally wired in place to prevent them slipping on the throttle gasser tube. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is bike number 10 of the JR Racing production line. Now, the bike's rear suspension system is a nice pair of YSS piggyback shocks made, of course, by YSS suspensions, and again these are top quality and a very popular choice for riders who race these older twin shockers. Of course, these modern equivalents are just a world apart from what was the pretty bad standard shocks that Honda fitted to these bikes when they pushed them out the factory door in 1978. Now, once again, more quality parts on Jem's Honda here, with a set of top quality levers and custom made control cables. Now, as this was still 1978 motocross bikes, of course, were continuing to use these steel swing arms, which was the material of choice of its day if you wanted strength and durability on your race bikes. But despite the use of steel items on these Red Rockets, this was still a relatively light motorcycle and was said to tip the scales at just 218 pounds, which was significantly less than the Honda's competition of that year. But there's certainly no mistaking that it was this Honda Works derived engine that made this bike what it was for 1978, as it was so compact and revolutionary for its day, and even the motor on its own only weighed 56 pounds, and Honda also claimed that this engine put out around 36 horsepower, which was a very bold statement for its time, as many bigger 500s in that year were struggling to hit the 40 horsepower mark on the dyno. But without doubt, these were still revolutionary machines in the world of motocross, and these CR250s are as popular today as they were back when they were first launched in the late 1970s. And although this example of Jem's is not a fully original bike, and to be fair to Jem, it was never meant to be a restoration of any kind, as this bike was built for a single purpose, and that was of course to win races. And judging by the look of the finished product, I'm sure it will certainly fulfill that initial intention. Well, I do hope you enjoyed having a look at Jem Parker's lovely Honda CR250 Red Rocket, and don't forget, if these are the kind of bikes that you like to have a look at here on YouTube, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Okay, thanks very much for watching Classic Dirt Bike TV, and don't forget, we will be back very soon with more of those vintage and classic race bikes.